Righty-ho, committee. It's just gone past 6 o'clock, so good evening and welcome to East Devon District Council's Overview Committee meeting on the 20th of February 2025. I'm your chair, Councillor Anne Hall. The meeting is being recorded and is live on the Council's YouTube channel. There are no fire alarm drills anticipated this evening. If the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building through the nearest fire exit by following the green running man signs above the doors and make your way to the rear of the car park. The organiser of the meeting will tell you when it's safe to return. Please make sure all phones are either muted or switched off. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website www.eastdevon.gov.uk. I will hand over to Sarah to do the roll call of the committee members.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Aurora Bailey, please.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brian Bailey.
Present, Sarah.
Thank you. Councillor Kevin Blakey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Davey.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Dumper.
Right. Present, Sarah, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Fernley.
Present.
Councillor Haggerty.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Anne Hall.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Heath.
Present. Thank you.
Councillor Levine.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Martin.
Present, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Vidal.
Present.
Thank you. And Councillor Wilson, who's not here. Okay, and I can confirm that we're called. I'll pass back to you, Chair.
Thank you, Sarah. Agenda item number 1, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 24th of October 2024, pages 3 to 6. Does any councillor have any comments on the minutes of the previous meeting held on the 24th of October 2024? No? Thank you. Then the minutes are agreed. Agenda item 2, apologies. We have none. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Councillor Brian Bailey?
On the coaching item, I'm a member of Exmouth Town Council.
Thank you. I will say, outside the committee, Councillor Jenny Brown?
I'm a Honiton Town Councillor, NRI.
Thank you. Vicky?
Thank you. Yeah, NRI for me as well, item 9, as I'm a member of Alderson Mary Town Council.
Thank you. And Councillor Barlow?
Yes, same for me, Sidmouth Town Council.
Thank you. And say within the committee, we've got Councillor Dumper?
Yeah, NRI, Exmouth Town Council, and with the coach working party.
Councillor Davey?
Yes, same Exmouth Town Councillor, NRI, with regard to the coach tourism.
Thank you. Councillor Aurora Bailey?
I'm the same chair. I'm Exmouth Town
Okay.
Council for the coach. Thank you.
Councillor Haggerty?
I'm the same chair for Seaton Town Council.
Thank you. And Councillor Heath?
Yeah, I'm a member of Beer Parish Council, so it's an NRI.
Thank you very much. Moving on to agenda item number 4, public speaking. There are no members of public who have registered to speak. Is that still correct? Thank you. Agenda item 5, matters of urgency. There are none. Item number 6, confidential and exempt items. There are none. So we will move on to agenda item 7, revisions of street naming and numbering policy on pages 7 to 28. And I will hand over to Officer Nick Wright, the Economy Practice Manager, to present this report. Over to you, Nick. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Sorry, I seem to have got a frog in my throat at the moment. This is just a revision of the policy. Street name and numbering originally sat in under planning many, many moons ago. And then with the starting or fruition of Strata and the new mapping system, it migrated across to the IT section. And obviously Strata, when it went tri-council, it then moved across and they picked it up for all three councils. And all this policy is doing, there are no fundamental changes. All it's doing is just bringing it in line with Exeter and Teambridge and highlighting the legislation. And that's as simple as it gets, I'm afraid. You know, it's nothing more complicated than that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Nick. Do we have any observations or questions from outside committee? No, we have inside committee. Councillor Levine?
May I just inquire, are we allowed to have number 13 on houses, or do we have 11A?
Over to you, Nick.
You are allowed a 13, but historically we haven't had a 13 because it's an unlucky number. There are a few around.
Thank you for that clarification. Anyone else? Councillor Roy Collins?
I was always registered to vote at Hale Farm, Axminster Road. Well, East Devon Council decided that Axminster Road didn't exist. So all the properties on Axminster Road, when they go to vote, they have great difficulty in finding their registration. It's
Can I stop you there? I think it's to do with elections and also it's not relevant to this policy, which is just being reviewed and updated. And it's more to do with the naming of streets, of actually not allowing people's names, surnames and Christian names being in there unless it's an exceptional circumstance and they've been dead for 50 years. So it's more to do with that, not what you're saying about. So we will have to move on. Thank you.
I don't agree. It means a lot of trouble for the ambulance or the emergency services because there's no road name up when all the other roads are named.
I think this will need to be looked at outside. It's not what we're talking about now. It's historical. I don't know if Nick can help me there. Thank you.
Yes, Chair. Where you've got odd road names where there's no, you know, it's a lane or something like that, you might have Rose Cottage, Wimpole, but the actual full address may be Rose Cottage, the lane between the A3052 and the B, whatever it might be, as the full postal address. Each property has a UPRN, which is a unique property reference number. Now that reference number is unique to each individual property in the UK. It's 11 digits long. That, when we create an address, that gets passed to a national hub and then gets fired out to all the emergency services, etc., etc. So they shouldn't have, or they don't have any problems finding particular addresses. Because the information is there, and if they put it into the relevant databases, it will come up with the exact location of that property.
Thank you for that, Nick. If in committee, if we haven't got any other questions or observations, I would like to move from the chair that the committee recommends the Cabinet approves the proposed revisions to the council street naming and number policy to align with Exeter City Council and Teambridge as well. Can we go to a vote? Yeah, all in favour? Yes. Thank you very much. Agenda item number 8, which is the nitty-gritty of wildlife improvement policy, pages 29 to 61. Andy Wood, Director of Place, will introduce this report. Over to you, Andy. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to introduce it very briefly and then hand over to Paul, who's done all the hard work. It's interesting from my perspective, just to reflect very quickly, just come out immediately before this meeting from the Cabinet briefing for the March meeting. And on that agenda were a series of items that relate to our responsibilities in relation to the Environment Act and nature recovery, spanning a huge range of activity from habitat banks and their establishment through to nutrient neutrality and also the forthcoming trees, hedgerows and woodland strategy as well. So it was a reminder for me about the breadth of activity we undertake in order to respond to our responsibilities and our declarations in relation to both the nature and biodiversity emergency and also climate change as well. So in that context, I think this work around wildlife improvement on our own sites is absolutely critical. I think the report for me is testament to the work that Paul and colleagues have done and really speaks hopefully to the work through scrutiny as well, how those recommendations have been responded to and hopefully including addressing issues around perhaps preconceptions, misconceptions as well around communication, really seeks to address those issues and puts us in a very strong position around our wider activity around this agenda, Chair. So thank you to Paul.
Thank you. I don't know whether to start just by asking if anyone's got any questions from the report, because that was a really good summary. You know, we have the international conventions, we have G7, we have national legislations, a whole host of them. We have climate strategies, we have East Devon District Council plans and policies, and then we have the new legislation, the Local Nature Recovery Strategy, which East Devon District Council is a supporting authority to, which is being led by Countryside. And when we met with Countryside last year, after the scrutiny committee, then the director of Countryside was saying that if Street Scene had a policy, it was kind of formulated to how we're going to tighten up, how we're going to become more efficient, how we're going to address residents' misconceptions, or residents, maybe they're not misconceptions, maybe they are valid. How we're going to reassess sites, how we're going to engage, inform and educate residents to fully understand the logistics of wildlife improvement areas, why they might be dominated by grass and how that domination is going to taper away over the years as nutrient cycle is broken. So yes, as part of the local nature recovery strategy and the habitat mapping and quantifying habitats that Countryside are leading on, this will fit really nicely into Countryside's legislated targets. And in the future, I think all departments that will be managing, responsible for green spaces would be setting service plan objectives on how they're going to map and quantify habitats and improve key species. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Paul. Questions, observations from outside committee? Councillor Barlow and then Councillor Jeff Young.
Thank you, Chair. Obviously, it's a very in-depth report. Just fascinated that the Equality Impact Assessment was 22 pages, where the actual report was 8. And I wondered, are we going to get this on every single report now, the Equality Impact Assessment? And I wonder how long it took to do that.
Over to you, Paul, I think. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. Well, it's difficult to answer how long it's taken to put that particular equality impact assessment together, because I've been looking at the census data since it was last published in 21. So I started at the council in August 21. And when we were looking at creating public consultations for specific bespoke wildlife improvement areas to see what residents felt about the access and use and enjoyment of those green spaces, then we were looking at the demographics for that particular area. You know, a part of town, a village, and looking at the protected characteristics, how the demographics relate to age. For example, Budley Salterton, you know, the very, very low numbers of under 5-year-olds. So how are we going to engage with school pupils in that way? And on the other side of that coin is that the demographics for 75 and over are 3 times the national average. So really, we kind of needed to work hand in hand with the protected characteristics of age and disability to look at, and the proportionality in that population pyramid, or is how, whether the any residents would be impacted by creating a wildlife improvement area, whether their access would be impinged upon, or their use of it, or their enjoyment of it, which is why we kind of started to scale down, make them more peripheral, make them kind of edge of amenity area spaces. And then we need to look at and assess what we've already got this year. We're not going to add any more until if the policy is approved, fingers crossed, then we will kind of look for efficiencies and maybe take some wildlife improvement areas away or reduce them, and then do public consultations in line with a comms plan. So yes, it took several weeks to kind of compile it at the end for this particular proposal, but census data is really important for ongoing public consultations, to really find out, kind of to be more inclusive when engaging and informing and educating our residents. Does that answer it, Councillor Barlow?
If it doesn't, I've got legal reasons which Anita will actually
I'm sorry, I'm being slightly facetious. I just think that 22 pages of equalities compared to an 8-page report, and the amount of time that must have taken, I just worry that, again, it's money and the use of our resources. And I know you're going to tell me that legally we have to do these things, but yeah, I hope we're not going to get this for every report, because otherwise I'm going to do it every time.
You can tag team with the other councillors who point out fairly consistently that we're not always very good at dealing with equalities. We don't get to pick the legislation that we follow. It's a statutory duty to have regard to protected characteristics. Unfortunately, it is what it is. So I think on this occasion, you've seen the report. You don't always get to see them. Maybe there's a discussion about where they're included, but actually I think where there's a really good piece of work. And of course, equality's impact has to impact the decisions made during the life of a project. So it's key, and we're open to JR if we don't do it. So unfortunately, that's what has to be done.
Paul, did you want to come back then?
Yes, thank you. Oh, I just had an addition. I had a choice. Well, the kind of street scene and senior management and myself, we all had a choice of whether we massively reduce the equality impact assessment and say, yes, we've done the work, and we've decided that residents' access, use and enjoyment of those green spaces isn't impinged upon in any way, and then let you just take that for granted. But in the end, we said, well, let's just present all of the information, and you can kind of pick what you want from that, which is, which is why most of the, I think nearly all of the protected characteristics I've put as neutral, and for religion I've put as positive, because every religion has environmental tenets in the ethos. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Moving on to Councillor Young, and then Councillor Rickson, and then Councillor Vicky Johns.
Thank you, Chair. as this is part of my portfolio, thank you, Paul, for the report. And it's interesting that even though we're a rural council, we're having to do this. We are introducing basically the countryside back into the urban areas, and it's working really well. Just to give you an example, London tree cover is 23%. Our tree cover, I think, is pretty well the same. So there is opportunities of in our towns to introduce even more tree cover and introduce more green areas. There's massive areas that we can do. And actually all the work that you see that we've had to do this, it does demonstrate that actually rewilding and wildlife improvements is a lot of hard work. It's not just let's let this go wild and it will save us some money. It doesn't. It does cost money to rewild, but it is a major area that we can improve our wildlife cover. Thank you.
Sam, thank you very much. Moving on to Marianne Rickson.
Thank you, Chair. My question relates to wildlife rather than the equality impact, that sort of thing. I'm just wondering whether I've missed it or whether we do have target species that we are looking at, because this is something that we look at with regard to national landscapes, the East Devon National Landscape Committee, and I wonder whether we also have any target species that we're trying to particularly help, perhaps anything that's on the red list.
Interesting comments. Over to Paul.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Rickson. That's the next stage. If this proposed policy is adopted and accepted, we just had a meeting with Will Dummett, the District Ecology Officer in Countryside, about whether Countryside can kind of set those KPIs, so that kind of really key performance indices with regards to key species, like the sill bunting or the horseshoe bat, or kind of any pollinators or any kind of invertebrates or small mammals, which are more likely to be in wildlife improvement areas. So yeah, so I think it's watch this space, because the next step is kind of KPIs. Because what we have been doing in Street Scene is kind of making it more ad hoc. We've been liaising, I have, with the Butterfly Conservation Trust, and they, because of the Dutch elm disease and the decimation of elms, we're highly endangered white hair-streak moth, which feeds exclusively on elms. So we were kind of sourcing elms and really wanting to re-establish elm planting, even if they only, live for 8 to 10 years, if we can replenish those with cuttings. So yeah, so until we meet with Countryside and get KPIs for key species, then it has been ad hoc in the same way that wildlife improvement, management and maintenance has been more ad hoc. Does that answer it?
Thank you. Be an interesting piece of work. Councillor Vicky Johns.
Thank you. Firstly, thank you for the report. I thought it was a really good report. It was very in-depth and very thorough, but I think that's necessary. I agree. I think there's a fine balancing act between rewilding and looking untidy, as you've pointed out in your report, specifically the line that says wildlife improvement areas, e.g. away from the conviction that wildlife improvement designations are a thinly veiled disguise for the council to save money by reducing grounds maintenance. My understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is that actually it's cheaper and more cost effective just to mow everything than it is to actually rewild. So trying to get the public to understand that it's cheaper to actually just mow everything So that's not what we're about. And that goes back to the old saying that you can't please everyone. In Ottery particularly, we've got quite a few streams, etc., leats and things of the such. And at this time of year particularly, they get quite overgrown. Now, I could have just missed it in the report. As I said, it's quite an in-depth report. But I couldn't see anything on there about, so down at the Land of Canaan, for example, you've got the Land of Canaan play park one side and the car park the other, and the stream in between is owned by the district council. I get a lot of people complaining about the fact that it's quite overgrown, blocked up, etc. The water doesn't flow very well, etc., etc. Now, I don't know whether or not that's just because of the time of year that it is, or what it is, or if there's anything in particular that I can feed back to the residents about that. But I also wanted to point out, you've mentioned in your report about street scene. We have a chap that works for you in street scene called Dean. He is phenomenal. He is absolutely fantastic. He works tirelessly. If any member of the public goes up and asks him a question or query, he will take time out of his day to answer them. Don't get me wrong, he gets all the work done, but he answers all their questions and queries, which takes a lot of the workload off town councillors who otherwise get asked every time we walk into a supermarket or any other shop. So I just wanted to say he's fantastic. But can you answer the question about the stream? Because I get asked, especially at this time of year, it gets very overgrown. It looks very boggy. It looks very unsightly. And I don't know if there's a reason it's left. Thank you.
Paul, can you answer that one, please?
I'll try. Thank you, Councillor Jones. I think it's might be just my omission because I'm more horticulture really. I always see the streams and waterways as environment. What's the company? The Environment Agency. Used to be National Rivers Authority. So I always see them as the Environment Agency property, the bed and banks of a waterway that runs through a street scene managed green space. I know that there are street scene operatives who go out quite often, especially after storms, to clear out flood channels, and they're specially trained for those. I think it's a valid point. If EDDC owns it and street scene's responsible for those banks, then it's a very valid point. Yeah.
Perhaps we could look at it into it in a bit more detail, just to firm up who's in charge of it. Moving into committee, we've got Councillor Heath, Councillor Martin first. Councillor Heath.
Thanks for that, Paul. You've put here it's important to note when referring to residents potentially, the water currently containing wildlife improvement areas, and you've listed them. Does that mean that the other areas are okay in terms of wildlife improvement, or is there a schedule where they've been identified as being the areas most in need? Thanks.
Paul, that's a good point, Councillor Heath. I think first, we need to address that if you look holistically at all of street scene managed land, and then look at the 85 wildlife improvement areas, it's a minuscule percentage. I haven't worked out the percentage of it, but it's very small because the equality impact assessment shows that we really have to balance the needs of the communities, the residents, visitors, their access, use and enjoyment of those green spaces. So I and my colleagues would go out and assess sites for wildlife improvement potential. So we would look at whether they're adjacent to highways or roads, whether they would block any lines of sight. And for example, there's a bullet point of list in the policy of what we would assess against. And then we would, if it's still kind of in potential, then we would go to public consultation and we would review what the public think about that proposal. But a lot of the land that isn't wildlife improvement is really deemed necessary for public use and enjoyment. And they are, they're marginal strips beside roads, or their roundabouts, or the parks, or pitches, sports pitches, throughways. There are so many areas that that are maintained. I think there's 4 million square meters that are maintained on a regular basis, despite overwhelming international, national, and council policy strategies and plans that say we should be doing more and more and more. So those sections that we say that aren't included in this policy is that kind of that balance that I'm talking about for residents.
Thank you very much, Paul. Moving on to Councillor Martin, then it's Councillor Brian Bailey, and then Ollie Davey.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you very much for the report. It's really welcome, and it's been lovely to see over the last couple of years these areas that have been given over for wildlife improvement. I'm talking particularly about my ward, which is Budley, and I'm sure that my fellow councillor Henry Vidal will probably agree with me here. The people of Budley embrace these wildlife improvement measures, and they look great and they support them when they're looking great. But I'm picking up on the comment my fellow councillor made earlier about when they start to go over and look really scruffy, we get bombarded with letters saying how untidy they look, and then inherent problems with dogs running into them, and then owners not being able to find what the dog has left for them, and then children running into them. So I think having the communication strategy is key to raising awareness of why we're doing this, and why it may not look great towards the end of the season, and that we have to let the seed fall so that the nice flowers will come back next year. And we can raise awareness with, maybe signage, and working with our town councils, because it's the town councils that get the brunt of these complaints. And Budley people do like to complain about things like this. So I suppose my question is there anything else that we can do to solve this problem? Thank you.
Paul, after you've had a drink.
Dry mouth syndrome. Yes, that's a really good question. And I think Budley Salterton residents don't like to complain. They like to exercise their rights, to want things to be better. And then when we, around the bus stop on Station Road, part of the green in Budley Salterton, when a couple of years ago we had a contractor to turf with a harrow to invert the turf, and then we re-sowed on it. And then we had a kind of really wet spring following, and we didn't get many wildflowers come back, and nettles came back. And then we're working on that again in March and April this year to re-establish that. It's a difficult one, because at the end of the report, when it says, are there any financial implications to this, I really wanted to talk to Simon Davey about, yes, there are so many. We need 10 times the budget that we have, so that we can, we can address all the, the predominance of grasses. So it is really important to do that, but I think because we've got wildlife improvement creation on hold for the moment, until we can to re-establish what we're doing and how we're doing it. So this spring we're working a lot with the meadow management machinery to scarify and resow and mow yellow rattle, and trying to parasitize those grasses to proportionally reduce them so we can get more wildflowers in, so we can change residents' perceptions, and then the communications plan, which is a 3-year plan, which is in development now. Easier said than done. And then we've got the signage designs that we're talking to Strata about. We've got old designs, but we want to, as part of the equality impact assessment, we want to make them more inclusive, make them less wordy. People who struggle with English, you know, make them more pictorial, brighter, easier to see, more numerous, and kind of regimented monitoring of, have they been broken, have they been pulled up by people, do we need to replace them, and to kind of work in conjunction with all of those together. So kind of bottom up, so on the ground to make it look better, but also top down to make sure the comms plan and the redesigns of signage and make sure that they stay in those areas. And hopefully it'll kind of top down and bottom up, it'll meet in the middle where most of us are, I think. Does that answer it at all?
Yes and no. I think, again, this might just come out of the comms strategy, but I'm sure that the town councils would probably welcome somebody coming along to talk to them about this.
That's a really good idea. So part of the comms plan is kind of there's a 3-stage consultation process. So the first one that we did was in mid-December last year, a couple of months ago, and we did it with grounds operatives, gardeners, team leaders and area officers. So all of the operational street scene staff, and we got them together on a few different sites and kind of really addressed what are the challenges that they feel and they see and they hear from residents, what are the challenges with wildlife improvement areas. We had poster paper and we had Catherine Colsley, the wonderful climate officer, and kind of looked at all of the challenges that they could possibly think of. And then we went on to the next step and what are the solutions? What do you think the possible solutions to those might be? So let's look at all your challenges. And there was a lot, because there are a lot of challenges. And then let's see what the solutions could be. You know, no matter how logistically unfeasible, let's just see what the potential solutions might be. So that's the first step, and the next step is to liaise with councillors. So as part of the comms plan, getting something out with the councillors update newsletter, and to see if we can, I think it's May, June, July, that type of period, is meet with councillors, meet with town and parish clerks, and then kind of get that input. What are the challenges? What are the benefits, you know, between the challenges and the solution? You've got this middle ground of what are the benefits? Because, you know, a lot of us do know the benefits. We can list them all, but do residents know the benefits? So, workshops with councillors, town and parish councils, and then the third stage of that is working with workshops with residents. It'd probably be more kind of face-to-face in a big room rather than workshops. And then at the end of all of that, that would feed into how we go into the second and third year comms plan. It's a bit complicated, but it's really important to do properly, as you say. It's just essential to get everybody on board and to know what the challenges are and how to solve them, which is why this is the perfect time for this proposed policy.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank
and it's
you.
good to hear there's a succession of education and talking to different people and getting it sorted so people actually, the residents, understand what's going on. Thank you. Next, we've got Councillor Brian Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the report, Paul. I'm looking at section here. Where are we? 20.6, protecting wildlife and improvement areas. Now, we're fortunate enough in Exmouth to have several large bat colonies, one of which in particular houses 2 species of very, very rare bats. I've been trying for a little while, along with a lot of residents in Exmouth, to get it into, turn it into a site of scientific interest. Sorry, I got the wrong teeth. Oh, we're right now. How would we go about this? I mean, would you be able to work with English Nature and have some authority yourself to turn this into a special site before it's wrecked or not? Thank you.
Thank you. Possibly something for after discussion afterwards, but over to you, Paul.
It's a good question. I'm a horticulture officer. I do get involved in a lot of different things, and I like to do that because I care and I'm passionate. And we're just talking to the tree officer in Street Scene now about putting up bat boxes and bird boxes in Sidmouth Cemetery and Glen Goyle, which is on Manor Road in Sidmouth. And also the Friends of the Byes were talking about owl boxes and bat boxes. My colleague who left in December to go on to Pastures New is missing, and that missing colleague would be the wider infrastructure to fill out the sections that I don't do, and that would be one of them. So it's a Parks and Open Spaces Improvement Officer, and the improvement is it's got a wide remit. It could be benches on notice boards or bat boxes, or it's improvement in as wide as you can make it, as wide as I go in my horticulture role, for putting in applications for the AONB for beach matting to increase inclusivity on beaches. It's out of my remit, but I liked it. Thank you.
You may.
Thank you very much indeed. So if I was to email you sometime in the near future, you could point me in the right direction, I guess. Excellent. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you. Councillor Ollie Davies and then Councillor Paula Fernley.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for the report, Paul. And it starts by stating the degree of wildlife depletion and loss that we have seen in this country. And I'm old enough to actually be aware of that. I have seen what has disappeared just during my lifetime. And this council has declared a wildlife emergency. So I was a bit disappointed to see that we've got a relatively low number of wildlife improvement areas in comparison to the number of areas that we manage. And we've even abandoned some proposed ones due to resident feedback. And you rightly point out the misconceptions that residents often have, and the perceptions as well, that we're just not maintaining things. And I agree that communication and signage are essential, and I think what you mentioned is pointing up the benefits of what we're doing is good. But we're not exactly behaving as though we've got an emergency, are we? And we've declared a wildlife emergency, and it feels like, it's World War II. We've got a proposal to put some barbed wire on the beach to stop the U-boats from landing, and we're having a public consultation and feedback about it, and people have decided their dogs might get caught in it, and so we've abandoned that idea. It does feel a bit like that, and I accept that we're talking about public land here, and we do need to balance the interests of our residents and those people who rely on those open spaces. But I do wonder if we're being a little bit too timid here because of fear of negative feedback, and I think people do need to revise their ideas of what public spaces need to look like. They don't always need to look neat and tidy. Neat and tidy can be death to wildlife, and a bit of wildness is actually quite good. So I think people maybe just need to start getting used to that And the more we can do in terms of signage and education, I think it's absolutely right. You've got a communication strategy in here. And I do think that's very important. But I do just wonder if we're just being a little bit too timid in the way we're approaching this.
Thank you, Councillor Davey. Do you want to come back or? Yes, thank you, Paul.
I don't know how to answer that, sorry. I'm just so timid. Yeah, I mean, it's a really good point. You know, the other side of the coin is, well, we just do it. You know, we own the land. It's our land. Let's just do it. And they can moan and gripe. When I started, the CEO at the time said that there are 10% residual moaning expletive deleted, begins with B. And that's what you always have. You'll have 10% residual moaning. Yeah, so should we just do it? Should we kind of expand it as far as possible? I think that would be a bit of implosion. In psychology, it's just kind of referred to as implosion, where I think street scene want to do systematic desensitization, which is just kind of granny's footsteps of, we are in a climate emergency, but I think we have to be careful that the way the human brain works, the way people work, the way people are, is that they're into, mitigating climate change and into increasing biodiversity until they are out of their comfort zone. So, we know about putting the heating on at home and how it's using up fossil fuels and releasing, it's releasing carbon greenhouse gases. But if we're cold, we're gonna put the heating on rather than go on to 4 jumpers. So there's a comfort level there, and I think implosion en masse would be out of the comfort level. But I'm happy to kind of redress that based on committee feelings. There can be another policy coming up this year or next year that says, let's be radical. But I think in the meantime, I will base it on kind of the consensus opinion. Thank you, Councillor Davey.
Thank you, Paul. If you could go radical, you'd need a lot more machinery and a lot more money, I think, as well, which has implications. Going over to Councillor Paula Fernley, please.
I should know better than try and follow Ollie on this topic. So I think he said pretty much what I was going to say. Yeah, I'm totally with you on everything you said. But there is one small mercy. In Tithe Barn, we've got Tithe Barn Way, and it's definitely rewilding itself. So, that's compensation. So I'll leave it at that. And I think we need to propose to accept this report.
Sorry, we've got a proposer, we've got a seconder, Councillor Dale Haggerty. Yeah,
Let's second that.
but we've got a couple more people wanting to speak first. We'll go over to Councillor Dumper and then Councillor Levine.
Mine, yes. Just 2 or 3 suggestions, actually. One is that we, in this council, we have a great example of communications policy, which we can all learn of, and that is, of course, the recycling and refuse. And one of the main reasons why that is such a success is because communications with residents, training, briefing, graphic stuff, everything came out. And I think that gives us an example for the sort of policies that we're doing. Another suggestion is that we have sheltered bungalow areas where we've got grassy areas either in the middle or round the back of them. And in many cases, the elderly people who live there don't actually use them very much. And they're not, of course, inhabited by children or teenagers or whatever who may want to kick balls about or whatever. So several of them, in my experience, certainly in Exmouth, you don't actually get very much happen with them, except that the grass is there. So I would suggest that, and this came up as a matter of casework actually personally, and I think you might find better reception for that kind of thing in some of those areas. So I would suggest that. And my third and final suggestion is use your local wildlife groups as well, you know, in your stages of consultation, use them, because they very often work with the town and parish councils anyway as volunteers. And I think to dovetail into that would be very useful. Thank you.
Thank you. I think Paul will take that away. Thank you. Councillor Levine.
Thank you, Chair. May I go off at the tangent? Technical question. The way I understand it is that what you are trying to reduce the nutrients in the soil to get the wildflowers going. Is there any room in your strategy for natural herbicides to accelerate the process of degrassing?
That would be controversial, but I think the way that the wildlife areas are to try and reduce the grasses and their vigour is to use the yellow rattle, which is seen as environmentally friendly. I know there's some natural herbicides, but they're very expensive and they aren't that effective. So over to Paul to add to that.
Thank you, Chair. So the East Devon District Council banned the use of glyphosate in street scene as the operational arm of the council in street scene managed green spaces in September 2022. There isn't anything on the market as good as street scene, as good as street scene. Yeah, that is true. Yes, yes. And additionally, there isn't anything else on the market as good as glyphosate. It's just a horrendous environmental and biological deprivation associated with it. So if we were to use selective herbicides, which kind of select which plants to kill, then selective herbicides only kill broadleaf plants and they leave grasses, which is why selective herbicides are often used on sports pitches to kill plantain and dandelion and anything else that would get in the way of a sports pitch. So it's incredibly hard to kill grasses naturally, other than what the chair says, with Rhinanthus minor, which is the yellow rattle I was talking about earlier. And we've just bought 10 kilograms of it. And that is the process that's coming up over the next few months, really, to scarify, open up the grass swaths, get yellow rattle in, like the success story of Friends of the Byres. Have to give them a shout out because they've been doing that on the meadow in the Byres. And if you know what yellow rattle looks like, it's all over the place, and the grasses are, they've lost their vigor, and the wildflowers are great. And I see that as kind of 4 or 5 years ahead of where we are in wildlife improvement areas and amenity spaces. So yeah, we couldn't really kill the grasses with a glyphosate ban. We wouldn't want to do that anyway because it's environmentally disastrous. We do have horticultural vinegar that we use. So the RHS approved, it's biodegradable and organic, and it's so the vinegar that we have at home is 5% acetic acid, 95% water. So this is 60% acetic acid. So it is a more of a organic, biodegradable herbicide. It's not systemic, it just burns off the leaves and then the plant will come back. So yeah, I think it's a bit more Councillor Davey radical approach on that one. But I like it. It's just that it's really bad for the people that we're trying to protect and the land that we're trying to recover. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Devine. So I think there's no one else to speak no. So we have a proposer, Paula Fernley, and seconded by Dale Haggerty, to actually recommend to Cabinet the adoption of the Wildlife Improvement Policy as an official EDDC policy. An overview, which I think Paul's taken on board, has provided some other feedback on the proposed Wildlife Improvement Policy. So going to a vote, all in favour? Yep, that's everyone. Thank you very much. Moving on, agenda item 10, the petitions report has been pulled and will be coming to our March overview meeting. It wasn't quite ready. Oh, sorry. Sorry. When? Sorry. I'd written around that bit. Agenda item number 9, coach tourism in East Devon, pages 62 to 72. I'll hand over to Tom Winters, the Economic Development Manager, to introduce the report. Over to you, Tom. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll begin, if I may, with a sort of brief update on how the sector is doing nationally and how that's relevant to us here in East Devon, after which I'll pass over to Jerry, who can give an update on the work that the Tusk and Finish group has been undertaking. So we've got some really good data from the Confederation of Passenger Transport. They predicted that in 2019, coach tourism contributed around £14 billion to the UK economy. We know that we'll, I suspect, in the Southwest get a disproportionately high proportion of that in terms of the income that we see. And we know it's also, more sort of a traditional element of the tourism sector as well. There were predictions that over time this sector would decline, but that's not materialised from their observations, and that the market is growing nationally, even if it's not fully caught up to where it was prior to COVID. So why is this important for us in East Devon? So in September of 2022, Cabinet adopted a tourism strategy, which very much committed us to growing our tourism sector through things like inclusivity, being more accessible and being a more sustainable destination as well. So that links to coach tourism, especially from a perspective of sustainability, because we know it takes cars off the road. A minimum of around 12 cars per coach, potentially up to 50, depending on how big your coach is, I suppose. And in terms of inclusivity, as I say, it's traditionally catered more towards the older demographic. I know, of course, that we are trying to target more younger people to come to East Devon, but it is important that we protect what we've already got. So therefore, trying to promote and making sure this particular sector, coach tourism, is sustainable is really important. And as well, we know that many of their itineraries run all year round, and we're trying to promote tourism, which, well, particularly in the shoulder seasons, and we know that, for example, they typically have rather familiar destinations they visit and do very similar itineraries. So it's about ensuring that we can protect, as I say, the trade that we already get here. So I think that links on neatly to the TAF, Tusk and Finish Group, which was set up in April of last year. The purpose of the TAF was to increase coach passenger visitors to East Devon. There was a terms of reference, which is very much sort of based on the practical. So looking at things like improving signage, whether we got well enough designated drop-off and pick-up locations, what the quality of the driver facilities are in those destinations, and as well as to foster a better working relationship with others who are, either internally in the council dealing with this, but with other stakeholders as well, and engaging with town and parish councils, the Confederation of Passenger Transport that I mentioned earlier, and local coach travel operators, TICs, etc. So a variety of meetings, various meetings took place between May of last year and January of this year. I'll hand over now to Jerry, who was engaged with that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So I'll just provide a brief update on the work of the TAF. We received really helpful contributions and presentations from partners from the Confederation of Passenger Transport, from players in the industry like Stuart Line Cruises, who support and have engaged in coach tourism for quite a while, as well as colleagues from Exmouth Town Council. The town has supported coach tourism and received visitors for a while, so they were giving us examples of best practice and how they have addressed and accommodated it. Based on this discussion and additional information about coach tourism and its benefit, the group determined that the best way to support coach tourism is to encourage our towns to apply for coach-friendly status, which is a national scheme run by the Confederation of Passenger Transport. And we facilitated that introduction. We provided that information for our town and parish councils for their considerations, and we were pleased that all of them expressed interest. At the time, 6 of our towns and parishes were in a position to apply. These were Bia, Exmouth, Honiton, Ottery St Mary, Seaton and Sidmouth. Axminster and Badley Salterton, they did express interest in that coach-friendly status and supporting coach tourism, but they're not quite yet at that stage to have enough facilities to support it. We also had internal review. Our parking manager looked at what facilities we have in terms of parking, in terms of tariffs, coach parking tariffs, whether they are adequate. And it was determined that we have sufficient parking and there are no other barriers to developing coach tourism in the district. So the next step was to actually encourage our towns and villages to apply. These 6 applications were received by the CTP, and an audit was organized in November of last year. Unfortunately, it coincided with heavy snow, so not all 6 locations could have been inspected. So the inspectors were able to visit Exmouth, Sidmouth and Honiton. And the only recommendation in terms of improvement that came out of the inspection was some signage, directional signage that could have been improved. And then we discussed as a group what would be the best way to support our towns in meeting that requirement, and it was determined that it would be best if East Devon District Council can contribute half of the required costs, and towns can then look to provide the additional 50% as a kind of fair way to deal with that cost. We also, from a small budget, was made available from the tourism strategy implementation budget to support marketing campaign, and for these 6 towns to receive bespoke itineraries in partnership with Visit South Devon, who has a dedicated group travel campaign. So that's something that is underway at present. So in summary, yeah, we have half of the towns already inspected, just signage being needed to receive that coach-friendly status, and Exmouth has already received it on the provision that it would be provided very, very soon, and the report goes into a bit of information how DCC are also supporting that cost through the Dinan Way extension project. And the other 3 towns are going to be expected at some point early this spring. And yeah, so the recommendation is that the cost is met between the town and parish councils and East Devon District Council to the maximum amount of 12,000. And again, this is an estimate based on current costs, and obviously each town or village would have different requirements and needs. So some of it would be less, some of this might be a bit less, but on average, it should be covered by 12,000 contribution from East Devon District Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Jerry. A comprehensive report and fantastic work carried out by everyone who's been involved. Thank you. Any questions or comments from outside? Councillor Marianne Rickson?
Well, I was interested to read in the report that there should be provision of sufficient car parking. What's the definition of sufficient and how do you evaluate that? With regard to Sidmouth, we have coach parking at the Manor Road car park, and I have seen all those slots taken sometimes, so we're obviously doing something right, despite the recommendation that we need better signage. Somehow they're finding their way to the right car park.
Thank you very much.
Over to you, Jerry.
Thank you for the question. So in terms of determining sufficient coach parking facilities, part of the inspection was internal, so it was our team and our parking manager who looked at it and determined that is sufficient, and also part of the inspection for coach-friendly status, that includes that on-site visit by the accredited body, the Confederation of Passenger Transport. So okay, they didn't pick up on any significant issues in terms of parking, and they did visit Sidmouth as well. So yeah, this is how it was determined.
Do you want to come back, Mary?
Yes, there's another question which I should have asked. I don't understand how the coach industry works, to be quite honest about this. But and how does it work? Do they book slots in advance, or do they just turn up and hope?
Jerry?
Yeah, it is quite a complex operation, and it has a lot of stakeholders and players. So in terms of all the coaches, they have to have package deals. They would have arrangements with hotel or accommodation providers. They will have itineraries to visit different attractions. So it's quite, a structured way of visiting. They wouldn't just turn up to explore an area. So they would be quite well thought through and explored itinerary in advance. And it's quite a traditional form of travel, traditional form of tourism that has been in existence for quite a while. The actual individual stakeholders and players, they wouldn't engage if the whole machine doesn't operate well and you have all these different facilities. That's why in the discussions within the group, we determined our role is as an enabler, so we can put some measures or contribute to some measures on the ground to facilitate, but it's ultimately the private tourism players that decide how they can take advantage of it. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if Del wants to come in then to just clarify things or add anything more to that.
Hi, thank you, Chair. Like Jerry says, people come in on the itineraries, very unusual to be unannounced, so each town would probably know in advance what's coming through, whether they're coming through booked into the hotels or booked in as a tourist day. So you probably get advance notice in the towns.
Thank you for that, Del. Moving outside again, Councillor Jenny Brown and then Councillor Barlow.
Yeah, thank you very much. Yeah, this is absolutely brilliant. We've been trying for this for so long. And it's not just Sidmouth looking for signage. Sidmouth and Exmouth are the two ends of the strands where the coaches go and they've got their itinerary and they stay. What we are trying to do as the other towns are to bring the coaches in with events and trying to spread out a bit more with the visiting. So we do need signage, especially in Honiton. We also need some help with white lining. And did I hear Jerry say it's also to help with the marketing? So can we make the recommendation maybe a bit more holistic and not just for signage, and actually say the other things that it's for, that it's a whole package that's going to be needed in there? And the second thing is, it's very good they're doing this, but we have to deal with Devon County Council to get the signs. Are we going to have help with that? Because they're being a bit obtuse at the moment on this. We have tried, because we had Phil Smith come out to us at Honiton, and so he actually walked around with us, said what was needed, and this is what's been fed back in through Sarah to yourself. So I just think we also need help with Devon County, because they are the ones that are going to slow it up, and we don't want to be slowed up. Not now, we've got the ball rolling. Right, thank you.
Thank you, Jenny. Over to Jerry.
Thank you. In terms of recommendations of this report, that was what the TAF determined to be needed at present. That is the only solid recommendation that came out of the inspection of the audit. In terms of the marketing campaign, this is already underway. It is covered, the cost is covered. Visit South Devon are currently developing the itineraries. They are presenting the different fairs and events. So this basically has already been achieved, although it's still in development. So that's why it doesn't form a recommendation. And anything wider than this, obviously, I guess it's up to this forum to decide. Thank you.
Thank you. Going next to Councillor Barlow. I can't see you behind.
I am here, Chair. Thank you. It is an excellent report. Thank you very much. I think the idea of sharing it between this council and the towns is an excellent one, so that everyone's engaged in this and it doesn't feel like it's being forced upon them. So I think that's a good thing. I think the one thing we've missed out on so far is the climate change and the impact on that. And it's the first one I think I've seen that's a high impact. So, you know, if you think about, 12 single cars for every coach, this is going to be beneficial if we are truly looking to be sustainable tourism for the future. So this is an important thing we need to look at. I take Marianne's point, Councillor Rickson's point that, how many coach parks do we need? Well, if it grows then and the cars become less, which whether it will ever happen, I don't know. We're going to need more, but that will be something for the future. I think this is a great first step. I think it's a very small amount of money to make a real difference. We've gone out to the experts, and we're lucky to have Del Haggerty leading us, who is an expert on coaches. But we've been lucky to have that so that we can get these people down to look at us. And the idea was to try and be the whole area to be coach friendly. We're not quite there yet, but this is a great first step. And I think that would be one of the first areas in the country to be totally coach friendly. So all I can say is please vote for it. Please make sure that the Cabinet vote for it as well, and then Council. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Barlow. One more from outside, Councillor Vicky Johns. Then we'll move into committee.
Thank you. Hi, Jerry. Thank you for that. That was a really good report. Again, I'm not going to reiterate what everybody else has said, but it is the whole idea, my understanding is that we encourage coach companies to come to Devon. And for example, they could stay in a hotel in Sidmouth or Exmouth and then take day trips to Honiton or Axminster or Ottery or whatever. You don't necessarily have to have all the provisions for people to stay exactly just in your town. The idea is to spread it out amongst everybody. What I would say is that I thought that at the last TAF that we had in January, the idea was that the town and parish councils, as was pointed out earlier with regards to the signage, etc., each town and parish has a highways officer that works for Devon County Council. So I thought the idea was, I know that in Ottery we've already spoken to ours, to get them to come to Ottery. Ours is in Ottery quite a bit, thankfully, and to walk around with us and say, where would you allow us to put up the coach signs? Where is the best place for them to be? How much are they going to be? Is there a yearly cost, maintenance cost, whatever you want to call it? So I thought that was something that we had discussed at that meeting, because obviously, as you've quite rightly pointed out earlier, every area is going to be slightly different. I noticed in the report that Exmouth, they're going to get the majority of theirs paid for because of the Dean Way extension. But places like Sidmouth, who I'm aware have lots of signs, and I go to Sidmouth frequently with work, people still do get lost. I can't tell you the amount of times I've been sat in Kenway House and watched somebody drive the wrong way out, and I'm like, seriously, the bus is coming towards you, can you not? But whatever. So yeah, it doesn't matter how many signs you've got, people will still get lost. But yeah, I think if we can get, as quite rightly pointed out, sometimes other councils aren't quite as helpful as they could possibly be, I think is the best way of phrasing it. But if you can get in touch with the highways officer directly, ask them to walk around with you and say, where would you say we can put the signs? Because they are the experts, they are the ones that will tell us, and hopefully with them telling us where they should be and the amount we need, it should be easier to get permission from Devon County then to actually do it. But yeah, I hope everybody supports this, because as we said earlier, the idea is we encourage people to come to Devon full stop. I wanted to say East Devon, but with everything happening, I suppose I have to say Devon. So we want to encourage people to come here full stop and spread it out, spread the love.
Thank you, Vicky. Over to you, Jerry.
Thank you very much. Yeah, absolutely. So it's part of the whole process. So here we are looking for support for the whole idea that EDDC gets involved and contributes financially. Then the process of actually having that directional signage in place, obviously it won't be just installed. It would be after consultation with relevant regulatory bodies and partners. So that would be part of the process. And that's why I mentioned the cost would be different for different locations, because some might need a bit more support and a bit more signage than others.
Thank you very much. Moving into committee, Del first, shall I go? And then we've got Councillor Levine.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I've got to thank all the officers, Sarah, Jerry and the whole team to get us where we are now. There's been a lot of work in this. With the recommendations, can I just go to that one first, Chair? I would like to add to the recommendations, if possible, that we retain an officer to help the continuity of this going forward. Sarah's done a great job, as has Jerry, but if we can retain an officer to get us over the line, talking to CPT, get the other towns over the line as well. That would be great. I don't know if some got vote on and just add to it.
I'm not sure on the implications of that at all. I would say it's added costs, I suspect, but can I hand over to
I think if we can get a view from
Tom
Tom in terms of the
Yeah.
resource implications, that would be useful.
Yeah, so about a third of Jerry's time at the moment is spent on tourism and the delivery of the tourism strategy. So I would expect this work to be encapsulated within that, because it has that strategic alignment, as I mentioned earlier.
So by the sounds of things, it's already included, so we don't need to have a recommendation. That is lovely. And over to you, Del.
Thank you very much. Again, thanks to everybody. To make this work in East Devon for Devon and working with everybody, this is great to see all the towns working together, bring in the businesses, the attractions, more people coming in. It's going to make towns stand up and make sure look at what they've got and what they can offer the coach industry, as well as the cars as well, because they get attracted as well. And I think it's going to highlight and push business locally as well into the hotels. This is good for everybody. I do hope everybody votes for this tonight. This is a lot of work's gone into it, and there's a lot further work to go into it. Sadly, yeah, we did get caught out by the snow on the inspections. I couldn't believe that in my life, but that's the way the cookie crumbles. Normally, snow lasts 15 minutes here, but it lasts all day that time. But there you go. But from me, I'd like to thank all the officers that took part in this. There's a lot of work gone into it, and thanks very much to the report from Jerry as well. I hope you all vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Levine?
Thank you, Chair. A lot of what I wanted to say has already been said, so I just want to reinforce what Councillor Jenny Brown and what Councillor John said. Coach tourism in Ottery and in Honiton and the inland area is different from coach tourism in Exmouth and the seaside towns. And we want to encourage the tourists to come and visit other parts of Devon rather than just the seaside, because we've got a lot to offer them, but it needs some work.
This is true, and I would say you're using the coach for a base and then spreading your wings out, and that's down to the coach companies selling a itinerary which is attractive for all, I think. Councillor Ollie Davey, then Councillor Paula Fernley. Oh, sorry, shall I? We'll let Paula go first.
Sorry, I've got the giggles. Yeah, even I had to check that coach travel was more environmentally friendly than catching the train, because I wasn't 100% sure. So I was enlightened by reading this report, and it does seem to be a good thing. You know, as we keep saying, and we mustn't forget that we have got this climate emergency happening. People still want to go on holiday, so if they can do it in the most climate-friendly way, then that's got to be a good thing, and to support our local environment. So I won't say too much, then Ollie can squeeze something in at the end. Thank you.
Thank you, Paula. Now, Councillor Davey.
No, thank you. You've done the green bit, Paul. So, no, it's a very modest outlay, and it's very effective, I think, in encouraging coach travel. I think it's really good bang for the buck. And I'm hugely supportive of coach travel for the reasons that Paula has outlined. And I just love going by coach myself. And I know Del has been to see the first electric coaches anyway, so I'm sure they're on the way. The 50-50 split with town and parish councils is a great idea, particularly as experts. She won't have to contribute because they're going to get theirs paid for by Devon County Council. I just wanted to check that all the remaining town and parish councils involved in this scheme have agreed to that. Yes, we are dependent on Devon County Council. And I know how long we had to wait just to get one car park sign in Exmouth to direct people away from the seafront car parks to point out there was one just a little bit further up the road. And how long did we have to wait for that, Brian? Was it about a year?
It's a little over, Olive, I seem to remember.
Tim will probably know as well. We had to absolutely wait for that, and it was coming and it was coming. So we really need to make sure that we put some pressure on Devon County Council. And I'll just say, having been watching Miss Austen, as I'm sure a lot of you are, I'm sure Sidmouth is going to be inundated with visitors wanting to see the level cobbled streets, the massive sand dunes, and the huge expanse of sandy beach that apparently Sidmouth has, according to the TV programme. It's going to be, I tell you, it's done wonders for Sidmouth tourism.
Thank you, Ollie. I think we'll go to Councillor Dumper and then Councillor Brian Bailey.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I really wanted to. I'm not quite sure whether Councillor Del Haggerty has actually proposed this recommendation. No, okay. I'll leave that. But I wanted to say thank you very much as being a member of the TAF. I think we had a very useful time. But going back, before Jerry was involved, etc., I remember Councillor Haggerty coming into the main chamber, into the main council, and making this recommendation. And I think there's a big shout out for Del, who has done so much to push this policy. And I think I would say, predicting, it's a bad thing, but I think virtually every member of the council is in favour of this policy, and I think that will carry it through. So, as Ian said earlier, thank you very much to Del, thank you to Jerry, and thank you for all the other members of our TAF, John, etc. Yeah, John, I'm looking around the room, and Vicky, I think. Yeah. So thank you to all, and Jenny. Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Dumper. Before I go to Councillor Bailey, I think Del wants to come back in.
Thank you, Chair. Can I make, I thought I got the words wrong the first time. Can I make the recommendation to accept? Thank you.
Thank you. I was waiting for it and it didn't come. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Levine. And now over to you, Councillor Brian Bailey.
Thank you very much, Chair. I never thought I'd say this at a council meeting, but thank you very much, Tom and Jerry. And if you're at a certain age, you will remember these things. I'm sorry, Chair, I couldn't resist. It was there right before my very eyes. But on that pleasant note, I'm pleased to say that Exmouth Town Council, no offence to you, Del, we're ahead of the game. We've been promoting Exmouth with Ron's and with Lisa R. Clark for many years now, and we're totally behind your scheme. And without tourism, we all know with seaside towns we will eventually die. We end up like Salcombe or something like that, which we don't want to be. No offence to Salcombe, but I think about 3 people live there in the winter, which is not good enough, is it? So I'm totally in favour, and so is the Town Council. Well done. Thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Bailey. Thank you. And just a brief from Tim.
Yeah. just to say, following Brian's comments there, of course, Exmouth rediscovered that we had actually been a coach-friendly town before. And thank you again to the fact that we did rediscover that. It had happened 10 years ago and we'd all forgotten all about it.
So we've got a proposer in Del Haggerty, seconder to the recommendation with Councillor Levine for, shall I read the whole thing out? We recommend to Cabinet that EDDC fund 50% of the cost of the signage required for East Devon towns to satisfy the criteria for Confederation of Passenger Transport, CPT for short, coach-friendly accreditation as identified through the formal CPT audit process, with up to £1,500 per town and an overall maximum for the district of £12,000, subject to individual town and parish councils meeting the remaining 50% of their costs, whatever that is. Reasons for the recommendation? Do we need to go to? No. So that is recommendation. We're going to go to the vote. All in favour? Thank you.
We don't know whether Jenny was trying to speak or vote.
Oh, sorry, Jenny.
I didn't know if you could add to there anything else that's needed, like white lines or...
No.
Rather than just stating signage, just two rows, or can we just put in what we need, a shopping list?
I think that needs to be done afterwards. Yeah, have a discussion with Jerry afterwards, please, Jenny. Thank you. Yes, agenda item 10 is being deferred once again to March meeting. Agenda item 11 is the work programme on pages 73 to 87, which I'm trying to scroll through to. The item is to receive the Overview Committee's work programme, which will be very interesting. They've been working hard on this one, Joe Fellows, and to consider the Cabinet Forward Plan. Now, would the committee wish to receive a report on key decisions prior to Cabinet? Any comments? Oh, got it. No comments? Councillor Del Haggerty?
Can we go straight to Cabinet?
What? Sorry?
You asked the report to come here first, before Cabinet?
This is the work programme. We're looking at 73, which is that long list at the back. Is there anything in there you would like to come to committee beforehand?
Oh, I see. So the issue,
Yeah.
not the whole thing.
No. It looks like there's a silence there. No, I don't think there's anything there. We've got on the Overview Committee work programme next time, we've got hopefully the housing strategy and the East Devon and Blackdown Hills National Landscape and Annual Review and Management Plan, along with the Policy Review Project Plan, which will be looking at when all of our policies will need renewal, etc. So we've got something to work from, which will be really good.
That'll get you Hootie very excited.
And the petitions. So on that note, this brings the end to our meeting, and thank you very much everyone for the enlightening discussions. Thank you.